guys, Helen Hartsmith here, and welcome back to the Heart of the Witch's Path YouTube channel. I hope everyone has had a wonderful day, or if you're watching this in the morning, I hope you have a good day. Whatever is applicable. I'm here today for the week 4 question for the YouTube Pagan Challenge. And I'm kind of excited about this one because I'm going to share some things that I haven't really talked about on the YouTube channel a whole lot. I've talked about it in my blog, so I'm kind of excited to share a little bit more. So the question this week is, what is your take on the Wheel of the Year? And I think that's really a good question because as pagans, Wiccans, witches, New Agers, however you want to classify or what title you want to claim for yourself, I think that this is where we see some variance. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you part of a lesson that is from a Keepers of the Hearth lesson that I've gone through. I hold a first and a second degree with Keepers of the Hearth. And so that is a family-based tradition that I think I've talked about before. It was started by a coven member of mine and her sister. And so it's a federal recognized organization, and it's for, it's like a family tradition. So Keepers of the Hearth is kind of an umbrella organization with family covens underneath them. And so my coven that I am one of the elders of, the Mystics of Rialor, is a member of the Keepers of the Hearth. And so they actually have a story that tells their version of the goddess and gods travel through the year and through the wheel and what their story is. And so I've taken those stories and I have them in my, what I call a book of light. And I call it a book of light. Some people call it a grimoire. Some people call it a book of shadows, but I call it a book of light because for me, light is coming out of a darkness and coming into the light. And so that's where my knowledge is stored. So this is my book of light. This is the outside. And I haven't really talked about it, but I'm a huge steampunk fan. So steampunk is my big theme throughout this book of light. And there's certain things that I'll share and certain things that I won't, things like spells and stuff like that, I probably won't share. And that's okay. But here are the pages, just so you have an idea. This is part of my Sabbats section. And so I have the goddess story separate from the god story. So here we have the goddess story, and this opens up really quickly. I mean, just so you have an idea. And then the God story is here. So what I thought I would do is share with you the story from Keepers of the Hearth, as well as, any extra things that apply to, that time of year or what have you. So I'll start with Yule because that's when the Sun King is born. So at Yule, the goddess has given birth to the sun, and she is in her mother aspect, okay? And for the god, of course, he's reborn. That's when he's reborn, is at Yule. Next, we turn the wheel and go to Imbolc, and the Lord is a small child at that time, waiting the springtime when he can grow more. And the goddess recuperates from her labors, and we await for the coming of spring. And so that to me is really what Imbolc is about. Imbolc for me being that Bridget is my patron goddess. Imbolc is special to me because that is a sacred day to Bridget. And so she's definitely part of our coven's celebration of Imbolc as we try to awaken That's part of what the ritual is about, is awakening the earth, saying, hey, spring is coming. It's time to wait. It's time to start waking up. So that's a really special time for me and one of my favorite Sabbats. Next, we go to Ostara, which of course is our spring festival. And that's when the goddess returns to her maiden form. And she's a young girl who's filled with, all that means, all the life and the vitality of spring. And for the Lord, for the God, he's growing. Just as the sun is growing in strength, he's growing. And so they're paralleling their journey through the year. The goddess's journey we really hear about as being depicted with the phases of the moon. So it's a 28-day cycle. But for the god, his journey really goes through the year with the sun, the waxing and the waning of the sun. So from Ostara, we move on to Beltane, which is when the Lord has grown to his full manhood. And that's when he falls in love with the goddess and they marry, and she conceives the new god that will be born at the next Yule. Yes, so she conceives her child at Beltane. Then we move to Litha, of course, the midsummer ritual. Both the Lord and Lady are at the height of their power at Litha, and the child grows in the belly of the goddess. Yes, and the Lord is the strongest at this time. Then we go into Lammas, which is the first harvest. This is when the grain is harvested. So I'm very familiar with agriculture, being that I'm in Michigan and my family are farmers. And so about the time of Lammas or Lunasa, depending on which word you use for that holiday, that Sabbath, about that time of the year, the beginning of August, that's when the wheat is harvested. So you'll start to see that harvesting season begin with the wheat. And let's see. So, and at this point, the lady knows that this is the beginning of the end. The god's power was at the strongest at Litha, and he is starting that decline towards Yule. From there, we move on to Maban, which is, of course, the second harvest. That's when the corn, the vast majority of vegetation is harvested. That's when your garden is harvested and things of that nature. So the earth is readying for the winter at this time, as is the lady who is heavy with the new Sun King. And as far as the god goes, his power weakens even more by this time, and death is close at hand as the days of the year grow shorter, as we move again towards Yule, towards that winter solstice, when, of course, that's the longest night of the year. And then finally we come to Samhain, and Samhain is when the old king dies. But we don't mourn for him because we know that he's going to be born again at Yule. And as far as the goddess goes, she grieves for the loss of the Lord, but rejoices because, of course, she knows too that he's going to be reborn at Yule. And so that's my take. One thing that I should mention too, for Samhain, that is the third harvest. And sometimes you don't hear people talking about the third harvest, but the third harvest for the ancient peoples, that was the time of the year when the livestock that you were going to slaughter and prepare and store so to get you through the winter, that's when that happened. So that's why it's known as the third harvest. And of course, Samhain is the time when we honor our dead. That's when the veil is at its thinnest. And I think for my coven, I think that's pretty much one of our really favorite times of year. We really do a special, not that they're not all special, but we do, the ritual for that time of year is very special for us. So there you have it. My take on the Wheel of the Year. There's probably other details that I could go into, but in the interest of the fact that this video is already 10 minutes long, you know, I don't need to make it any longer. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're doing the YouTube Pagan Challenge as well, I'm enjoying everyone's videos that I'm watching. So keep up the good work, keep up the motivation as we work through the year together and work through this challenge together. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I will talk to you again soon. Thank you for walking the path a little while with me. Blessed be.